The rain hammered against the stained glass windows of the Gilded Rose, an ultra-exclusive Italian restaurant in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side. Elena Sinclair adjusted her apron in the back, her hands trembling slightly. She was 27 years old, with tired eyes that carried a lifetime of pain compressed into just a few years. She had only been working here for 3 weeks. The tips were enough to keep the heat running in her Queens apartment, and that was all that mattered. "Elena, wake up," Marco, the floor manager, hissed. "Table 4 is here. Do not make eye contact unless spoken to. Don't spill a drop." "Who is it?" Marco's face went pale. "Dominic Castellano." The kitchen fell deathly silent. Everyone in New York knew the name. Dominic Castellano was the boss of the Castellano crime family, a widower famous for his brutality toward enemies and his absolute isolation. "I'll take the table," Elena whispered, though every instinct screamed to run. She needed the money. At table 4 sat a man carved from granite, 36 years old. Tailored suit worth more than her yearly salary, dark hair, predator eyes, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. But it wasn't him who captured Elena's attention. It was the child, a little girl, perhaps 5 years old, golden curls, large, solemn blue eyes too old for her face. She clutched a worn teddy bear. This was Sofia Castellano, the silent princess. She hadn't spoken a word since birth, a mystery that baffled the best specialists. Elena approached with the water pitcher. "Good evening, sir. Still or sparkling?" Dominic didn't look up. "Sparkling. Warm milk for the child." As Elena leaned to pour, her wrist brushed the table. A soft scent drifted from her skin, vanilla soap and cheap lavender lotion. Dominic tensed. He looked up, eyes locking onto hers with sudden intensity. Something flashed in his gaze. Recognition. Pain. Then it vanished. Elena turned toward the child. "And for you, little one?" Sophia lifted her head. Blue eyes met blue eyes. Elena felt a physical jolt, an electric shock through her chest, a sensation she hadn't felt in 5 years. Not since waking up in a cold clinic with a grim-faced doctor telling her that her baby hadn't survived. That phantom ache in her womb surged back. Sophia dropped her teddy bear. The child's mouth opened. Her lower lip trembled. Then came the sound, rusty, small, broken, like a hinge unused for 5 years. "Ma, Ma." Dominic froze. "Ma, Ma." Sophia screamed louder. The entire dining room went silent. Elena's eyes filled with tears she didn't understand. "Mama, Mama, up!" Sophia shrieked, pointing at Elena, small fingers trembling, reaching desperately. Dominic rose to his feet, chair scraping against hardwood. He looked at his daughter reaching for a stranger, then at Elena. His face twisted with confusion and fury. "Who are you?" His voice was a low growl. "Who sent you?" "Nobody," Elena stammered, clutching her tray like a shield. "I'm just a waitress, I swear." "My daughter hasn't said a single word in 5 years, Dominic said, closing the distance. "She doesn't speak. She doesn't cry. And tonight she calls you mother?" He grabbed Elena's wrist. His grip was iron, and deep in Elena's memory, a door she didn't know existed began to crack open. "I don't know you," Elena cried, trying to wrench her wrist free from Dominic's iron grip. "I don't know your daughter. I'm just a waitress, please." But Sophia's screams drowned out her pleas. The little girl was thrashing in her booster seat, arms stretched toward Elena, face streaked with tears. Then she spoke again. "Daddy, no. Don't hurt Mama." A complete sentence. The second sentence of her entire life. Dominic's grip loosened for just a moment. He stared at his daughter as if seeing a ghost. 5 years. 5 years of silence. 5 years of specialists, therapists, experimental treatments. 5 years of watching his child retreat further into herself, clutching that teddy bear, never making a sound. And now 2 sentences. Spoken to a stranger. For a stranger. The confusion in Dominic's eyes hardened into cold resolve. He snapped his fingers. Tony Ricci, his head of security, appeared instantly at his side. "Clear the restaurant," Dominic ordered. "Everyone out, now." Chaos erupted. Waiters abandoned their trays. Diners grabbed coats and scrambled for exits. Marco tried to protest, but one look from Tony silenced him. In 60 seconds, the Gilded Rose was empty. Only Dominic remained, his security team, Sophia, still sobbing, and Elena, trembling against the bar. The rain continued hammering the windows. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Dominic released Elena's wrist and straightened his jacket. When he spoke, his voice was ice. "You're not going home tonight." Elena's blood ran cold. "This is kidnapping. You can't, I can do whatever I want. Dominic cut her off. Until I understand why my daughter believes you're the woman I buried 5 years ago. You belong to me. He nodded to Tony. Bring the car. We're going to the estate. As Tony moved toward her, Elena's mind fractured into fragments of memory. 5 years ago. A cold room in Switzerland. The Genesis Life Clinic. She had been 22. Desperate. Her father needed heart surgery, a bypass that insurance wouldn't cover. The bills were mounting. Creditors called daily. Then she found the agency online. Genesis Life. They offered $50,000 plus medical expenses for a surrogate mother, a closed contract, anonymous parents. She never met the couple, never knew their names. She only knew they were wealthy, European, and couldn't conceive. She carried the baby for 9 months. On October 14th, she went into labor. They sedated her heavily. When she woke up, Dr. Crawford stood at her bedside with a somber face. There were complications, he said. The baby was born alive, a girl, but she didn't survive. It's better not to get attached. They didn't let her hold the baby. They gave her the money and a plane ticket home the next day. She had mourned that child for 5 years. In her mind, she called her Rose. But now Elena looked at Sophia. Golden curls, blue eyes. The same blue eyes that stared back at Elena every morning in the mirror. The same eyes. A black hood descended over Elena's head. Rough hands shoved her forward. Car doors opened. She was pushed onto leather seats. The engine roared to life. Elena couldn't see, couldn't move, could barely breathe through the fabric, but her last thought wasn't fear for herself. It was the realization that Sophia's cry had unlocked a door in her mind. A door she didn't know had been sealed shut. A door that hid a truth too terrible to imagine. What if her baby hadn't died? What if her baby was sitting in this car right now, calling her mama? The vehicle sped into the rainy night, carrying Elena toward answers she wasn't sure she wanted to find. The drive lasted 45 minutes. 45 minutes of suffocating silence. 45 minutes with a black hood over her head, breathing through fabric that smelled of dust and fear. Elena couldn't see anything, but she could hear the steady rhythm of rain against the car roof, the hum of the engine, the occasional crackle of a radio. And Sophia, the little girl, had stopped crying somewhere along the way. Now she made soft whimpering sounds, like a puppy having a bad dream. Every few minutes, Elena heard Dominic's low voice murmuring something in Italian, soothing words for his daughter that he would never offer to his prisoner. When the car finally stopped, rough hands pulled Elena out. The hood came off. She gasped. Before her stood the Castellano estate. It rose from the cliffs of Long Island like a fortress from another century. Massive stone walls, iron gates that had to be 20 feet tall, towers silhouetted against the stormy sky. Guard dogs patrolled the perimeter, German shepherds with eyes that gleamed in the security lights. To anyone else, this was a palace. To Elena, it was a prison. They marched her through the front doors, across a marble foyer larger than her entire apartment, up a sweeping staircase lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. She caught a glimpse of Dominic carrying Sophia down a different hallway. The little girl was asleep now, her golden head resting on her father's shoulder. But even in sleep, her small hand reached out, toward Elena, as if searching for something she'd lost. Tony Ricci stopped at a heavy oak door. He opened it and gestured inside. "Guest room," he said flatly. Elena stepped in. The room was enormous, canopy bed draped in silk, antique furniture that probably cost more than her life savings, a window overlooking the black, churning sea. "Don't try the windows," Tony said from the doorway. "The dogs patrol the grounds at night. They're not friendly." The door closed. The lock clicked. Elena stood alone in the silence. She walked slowly to the bed and sat on the edge. Her legs were shaking. Her mind was spinning. She rolled up her sleeve and stared at the faint scar on the inside of her elbow. The IV mark, 5 years old. From the clinic in Switzerland, a memory surfaced, one she had buried deep. The cold room, the beeping monitors, the heaviness of sedation pulling her under, and a voice, a man's voice, floating through the fog of anesthesia. "Take the baby before she wakes up." Elena had always told herself it was a hallucination, a side effect of the drugs, a nightmare that felt too real. But now she wasn't sure. She pressed her palm against her abdomen, where Sophia had grown for 9 months, where she had felt kicks and hiccups and the flutter of a tiny heartbeat. They told her that heartbeat had stopped. They told her the baby died. But babies don't recognize strangers as their mothers. Babies don't scream mama at women they've never met. Unless the door burst open. Elena jumped to her feet. Dominic Castellano stood in the doorway. He had removed his jacket and tie. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a cross tattoo on his chest. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp as blades. In one hand, he held a glass of whiskey. In the other, a thick manila folder. "Sit down," he said. "It wasn't a request. We need to talk." Dominic dropped the manila folder onto the nightstand. Papers spilled out photographs, documents, printed records. "I've had my people investigating you for the past 2 hours," he said, settling into an armchair across from Elena. Elena Sinclair, born in Columbus, Ohio, moved to New York 5 years ago, dropped out of art school, worked as a barista, then a receptionist, now a waitress. He took a slow sip of whiskey. Clean record. No debts except student loans. No criminal history. No connections to organized crime. Elena said nothing. Her hands were trembling in her lap. "You don't exist in my world," Dominic continued, his eyes boring into hers. "No connection to the Castellano family. No connection to my late wife, Victoria." "I don't know who Victoria is," Elena whispered. "She was Sophia's mother." Dominic's jaw tightened. She died giving birth to Sophia at a private clinic in Switzerland. October 14th, 5 years ago. The color drained from Elena's face. She grabbed the bedpost to steady herself. "October 14th, she breathed. That's the day I gave birth." Dominic set down his whiskey glass. Slowly, deliberately. The room fell silent except for the rain lashing against the windows. "Explain," he said. "Now." Elena's tears came before her words. "I was a surrogate," she choked out. 5 years ago, I was 22. My father was dying. He needed a heart bypass. The insurance wouldn't cover it. The bills kept coming. I was desperate. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I found an agency online. Genesis Life Clinic. They said they had a wealthy couple in Europe who couldn't conceive. They offered $50,000 plus medical expenses. It was enough to save my father's life." Dominic remained motionless, a statue carved from ice. "Continue." "They flew me to Switzerland," Elena said, her voice cracking. "They implanted the embryo. I carried the baby for 9 months. I never met the parents. It was a closed contract, completely anonymous." She hugged herself, shivering despite the warmth of the room. "Then on October 14th, I went into labor. They sedated me heavily, too heavily. When I woke up," her voice broke completely. "When I woke up, the doctor, Dr. Crawford, he told me there were complications." She looked up at Dominic with red-rimmed eyes. "He said the baby was born alive. A girl. But she didn't survive. He said it was better not to get attached." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "They didn't let me hold her. They didn't let me see her properly. They gave me the money and put me on a plane the next day." Dominic's expression hadn't changed, but his knuckles were white around the whiskey glass. "I've been mourning her for 5 years, Elena whispered. "In my mind, I called her Rose." The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Then Elena froze. A memory surfaced, one she had buried so deep she'd forgotten it existed. The delivery room, the bright lights, the fog of sedation closing in. But before the darkness took her completely, she had seen something. Just for a second, the baby, her baby, and on the baby's left shoulder a birthmark, shaped like a tiny heart. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God," she gasped. The birthmark. I saw a birthmark. On her left shoulder, shaped like a heart. Dominic went rigid. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. But he didn't seem to notice. He was already reaching for his phone. Dominic's fingers moved across the phone screen with trembling urgency. He scrolled through photos. Dozens of them. Sophia at the park. Sophia with her teddy bear. Sophia refusing to smile for the camera. Then he found the one he was looking for. Sophia in the bathtub, taken 3 months ago by the nanny. He turned the screen toward Elena. "Look." Elena leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat. There, on Sophia's left shoulder, was a birthmark, shaped like a tiny heart. Exactly where Elena remembered seeing it 5 years ago. Exactly the same shape. Elena collapsed to the floor. Her knees hit the hardwood with a painful thud. Her hand flew to her mouth, muffling the sob that ripped from her chest. "That's my baby," she gasped. "That's my daughter." She was shaking violently now, tears streaming down her face. 5 years of grief and confusion erupting all at once. They told me she was dead. They told me she was dead. Dominic stood frozen, staring at the woman crumbling before him. His mind was racing. He pressed the intercom button on the wall. "Tony." "Yes, boss?" Bring a DNA collection kit to the guest room. And contact Dr. Crawford at Genesis Life. Tell him Sophia is sick, high fever, won't stop crying. Tell him to come immediately. Tonight. Understood. The intercom clicked off. Dominic walked to the window, his back to Elena, staring out at the black ocean. His thoughts drifted to the past. Victoria had announced her pregnancy 6 years ago. He remembered the champagne, the celebration, his mother crying with joy before she passed away that winter. But throughout the pregnancy, Victoria stayed in Europe. The stress of New York is bad for the baby, she had said. I need peace and quiet. I'm shopping for the nursery in Paris, she had said. The best furniture is there. Dominic had been busy. The war with the Russian Mafia was at its peak. Bodies were dropping every week. He couldn't afford to leave New York, so he visited Victoria only twice during those 9 months. Twice. He remembered how she always wore loose dresses, how she avoided being photographed, how she turned away when he tried to touch her belly. He thought she was being protective. Now he wondered if there had been nothing to protect. When Victoria went into labor, he flew to Switzerland immediately, but he arrived too late. Dr. Crawford met him in the lobby. I'm so sorry, Mr. Castellano. Victoria suffered a pulmonary embolism. We lost her, but we saved the child. Dominic had buried his wife 3 days later. He brought Sophia home. He never questioned anything. Why would he? Victoria was his wife. Sophia was his daughter. The doctors had the paperwork. The birth certificate was official. But now, if Elena was telling the truth, Victoria was never pregnant. She hired a surrogate. Used Dominic's sample probably taken from the fertility clinic where they had tried treatments years before. She staged the entire pregnancy. She lied for 9 months, and then she died before she could complete the deception. Dominic turned back to Elena. She was still on the floor, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth. 5 years, she whispered. I mourned her for 5 years. Dominic's voice was hoarse when he spoke. If what you're saying is true, he couldn't finish the sentence. Because if it was true, then the last 5 years of his life had been built on a lie, and somewhere, someone had stolen a baby from its mother. His baby, her baby, their baby. They had moved to the library to wait. Dominic sat behind his massive oak desk, nursing his 3rd whiskey. Elena sat across from him in a leather armchair, her eyes red and swollen from crying. The clock on the mantel ticked past midnight. Neither of them spoke. The DNA samples had been collected an hour ago. Dominic's private lab technician was running the tests in the basement. Dr. Crawford was on a helicopter from Boston, still 2 hours away. The silence was suffocating. Then the library door creaked open. Both of them turned. Sophia stood in the doorway. She wore a white silk nightgown that pooled around her bare feet. Her golden curls were tangled from sleep. She clutched her worn teddy bear against her chest. She had escaped from the nanny who had fallen asleep in the rocking chair. Dominic started to rise. Sophia, sweetheart, you should be in bed. But Sophia wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on Elena. Only Elena. The little girl walked slowly across the room. Her bare feet made no sound on the expensive Persian rug. She passed her father's desk without a glance. She stopped in front of Elena's chair. For a long moment, she just stared. Then she reached out her small hand and placed it in Elena's palm. Dominic froze. In 5 years, Sophia had never initiated physical contact with anyone. She flinched when touched. She pulled away from hugs. She wouldn't let the nannies hold her. Wouldn't let the therapists near her. Wouldn't even let Dominic comfort her when she cried. The specialist said it was a response to deep psychological trauma. They said she might never bond with anyone. But here she was, voluntarily touching a stranger. Sophia climbed onto Elena's lap. She curled up like a kitten, tucking her head under Elena's chin. Her small body relaxed completely, every muscle letting go of tension she had carried for 5 years. Mama, she whispered contentedly. Mama warm. Elena's arms wrapped around the child instinctively. She didn't think. She didn't question. Her body simply knew what to do. Tears streamed down her face as she held the daughter she thought she had lost. The daughter she had mourned for 5 years. The daughter who had somehow recognized her across a crowded restaurant. I've got you, Elena whispered into Sophia's hair. Mama's got you. Dominic watched from behind his desk. He had hired the best nannies money could buy, the most renowned child psychologists, specialists who flew in from Europe and Asia. None of them could reach Sophia. But this woman, this waitress from Queens, had broken through in a single night. Sophia's breathing slowed. She was falling asleep, her small hand clutching Elena's shirt like she would never let go. The intercom on Dominic's desk buzzed. He pressed the button. "Boss," the lab technician's voice crackled through. "I ran the results 3 times to be sure." Dominic's jaw tightened. "And?" A pause. "It's a match, boss. 99.99% probability." Elena looked up, her heart stopping. "The woman is the biological mother of the child." The words hung in the air like smoke. Dominic slowly turned to look at Elena, at the stranger holding his daughter. "No, not a stranger. The mother. The real mother." Sophia stirred slightly in Elena's arms, murmuring something in her sleep. "Mama, stay." And for the first time in 5 years, the silent princess smiled. The helicopter landed on the estate's private helipad at 3 a.m. Dr. Henry Crawford stepped out, still wearing his expensive cashmere coat from the Boston conference. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour. His rimless glasses caught the security lights. He radiated the polished arrogance of Ivy League elite. Tony escorted him to the library. Dominic was waiting behind his desk. Elena was in the adjacent room. The door cracked open just enough for her to hear every word. Sophia was still asleep upstairs, clutching her teddy bear. "Dominic," Crawford said smoothly, setting down his medical bag. "Tony said Sophia was ill. High fever? Where is she? Let me examine. Sit down." Crawford paused, sensing something wrong. He sat. Dominic didn't offer whiskey, didn't offer pleasantries. He simply stared at the doctor with eyes that promised violence. "Tell me about the surrogacy." Crawford's face flickered just for a moment. "I'm not sure what you mean. Victoria carried Sophia herself. I delivered the baby. You know this." "Do I?" Dominic slid a photograph across the desk. The birthmark. The heart-shaped birthmark on Sophia's shoulder. "A waitress recognized my daughter tonight," Dominic said quietly. "Called her by name. My daughter, who hasn't spoken in 5 years, called this waitress Mama." Crawford's smile wavered. "Trauma response. The child is projecting. It's common in cases of selective mutism. She saw a female figure and attached the label 'She's been missing, stop lying to me.'" Dominic slammed his whiskey glass on the desk. It shattered, sending amber liquid and broken crystal across the polished wood. Crawford flinched. "I have the DNA results," Dominic growled. 99.99% match. That waitress is Sophia's biological mother, so you have exactly 30 seconds to tell me the truth before I let Tony show you how we handle liars in my family." The doctor's composure crumbled. His face went gray. His hands began to shake. The arrogance melted away, revealing the coward underneath. "Victoria was infertile," he whispered. Louder. "Victoria was infertile." Crawford's voice cracked. "Her uterus was scarred from an accident when she was young. She could never carry a child. She knew you wanted an heir. She knew her marriage, the alliance between the Castellano and Visconti families, depended on producing one." He wiped sweat from his forehead. "She hired a surrogate through Genesis Life. The plan was to use Victoria's eggs and your sperm. But Victoria's eggs weren't viable." Dominic's jaw tightened. "So, we had to improvise," Crawford admitted. "We used the surrogate's egg to complete the contract." The words hit Dominic like a physical blow. Sophia wasn't just carried by Elena. Sophia was Elena's biological child. Victoria died on the table, pulmonary embolism. It was real, I swear. And I panicked. Crawford was babbling now. "If I told you the truth that the baby wasn't Victoria's, wasn't a legitimate Castellano heir, you would have rejected her. Or worse, you would have killed me for the deception. So you told the girl her baby was dead. I gave her the money, put her on a plane, gave you a daughter." Crawford spread his hands desperately. "Everyone won. Everyone won." Dominic rose slowly, his shadow falling across the trembling doctor, except the mother who's been mourning a ghost for 5 years. He leaned across the desk. "But you couldn't have done this alone. Fake birth certificates, sealed medical records, international paperwork. That costs millions, Crawford." Victoria didn't have millions. Crawford's eyes darted toward the door. "Who paid for it?" Dominic roared. The doctor shrank back in his chair. "Your uncle," he whimpered. "Marcus Castellano." Dominic went completely still. "Marcus? Uncle Marcus, who sat at Sunday dinner every week. Uncle Marcus, who brought toys for Sophia on her birthday. Uncle Marcus, who Dominic trusted like a father. He found out about the surrogacy," Crawford continued. "He came to me after Victoria died, paid for everything, told me to give you the baby and keep my mouth shut." Dominic's hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. Dominic circled the desk slowly, his footsteps echoing like a death march. Crawford pressed himself deeper into the chair, tears streaming down his face. "Tell me everything," Dominic said. "From the beginning. Don't leave out a single detail. Crawford nodded frantically. Marcus knew about Victoria's infertility from the start. He had someone inside Genesis Life, a nurse who reported to him. When Victoria began arranging the surrogacy, Marcus found out within days. He didn't stop her? No. Crawford shook his head. He watched. He waited. He let the whole thing play out. Dominic's eyes narrowed. Why? Because he saw an opportunity. Crawford wiped his nose with the back of his trembling hand. When Victoria died on the table, Marcus came to me within hours. Before I even contacted you, he had a proposal. Keep quiet about the surrogacy. Hand the baby to you as Victoria's biological child, and receive a very generous payment for my silence. How generous? $5 million, plus ongoing payments for medical consultations over the years. Dominic felt his blood turn to ice. But why? He demanded. Why would my uncle want me to raise a child that isn't Victoria's? What does he gain? Crawford hesitated. Answer me. Your father's will, Crawford blurted out. The inheritance clause. Dominic went still. Your father, the previous dawn, he wrote very specific terms into his will. You only inherit full control of the Castellano Empire if you produce a biological heir before your 40th birthday. The shipping ports, the construction companies, the offshore accounts, all of it. Crawford swallowed hard. Without a legitimate heir, control passes to the next in the family line. Marcus, Dominic breathed. Yes, the pieces clicked into place like a nightmare puzzle. He created a time bomb, Dominic whispered. If the truth ever came out that Sophia isn't Victoria's child, that she's not a legitimate Castellano heir, the will becomes void. I lose everything. Crawford nodded miserably. Marcus has been holding this secret over your head for 5 years. He could expose it whenever he wanted. Use it to blackmail you, or wait until the perfect moment to destroy you completely. Dominic turned away, staring at the rain-lashed windows. His uncle, the man who had bounced him on his knee as a child, the man who had taught him to shoot, the man who had stood beside him at Victoria's funeral, hand on his shoulder, whispering words of comfort. All of it was a lie, a long con that had lasted 5 years. There's more, Crawford added weakly. Marcus has been skimming from the shipping business. Millions of dollars funneled into accounts you don't know about. He's been building his own power base, waiting for the right time to make his move. Dominic turned back to face the doctor. His expression was completely calm now. That was the most terrifying part. Dr. Crawford, he said quietly, thank you for your cooperation. Crawford's face flooded with desperate hope. So I can go? We're done? I'll disappear. I swear. You'll never hear from me again. Dominic nodded to Tony. 2 guards stepped forward and grabbed Crawford under the arms, lifting him from the chair. Wait! Crawford screamed, his legs kicking uselessly. I told you everything. I helped you. Dominic walked to the door of the adjacent room and opened it. Elena stood there, pale and shaking, having heard every word. Behind him, Crawford's screams grew more frantic. Take him to the boat, Dominic ordered without turning around. Go far. Past the continental shelf. No! Please! I have information, I have files. The library doors slammed shut, cutting off the doctor's pleas. His screams echoed down the hallway, then faded, then stopped. Elena stared at Dominic, horror written across her face. You just killed him, she whispered. Dominic met her eyes. I protected my family. He stepped closer to her. And whether you like it or not, Elena, that now includes you. The library fell silent after Crawford's screams faded. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had just witnessed a man being dragged to his death, and the man who ordered it was now walking toward her. Come with me, Dominic said. He led her back to the main room where Sophia slept on the sofa, curled around her teddy bear. Even in sleep, the little girl's hand clutched the fabric of Elena's waitress apron, which Elena had draped over her like a blanket. Dominic stared at his daughter for a long moment. Then he turned to Elena. If Marcus finds out you exist, you'll be dead within 24 hours. Elena's blood ran cold. Why? I'm nobody. You're living proof. Dominic cut her off. You're the biological mother. You prove that Sophia is legitimately my child, not Victoria's, but mine. My blood. My heir. You destroy Marcus's leverage completely. He walked to a small safe built into the wall, punched in a code. The door swung open with a soft click. He pulled out a black velvet box. Old, worn at the edges. Clearly an antique. He opened it. Inside sat a ring, an emerald-cut diamond surrounded by deep blue sapphires. It caught the lamplight and scattered it across the walls like fallen stars. This belonged to my grandmother, Dominic said. She wore it for 63 years. Elena stared at the ring. I don't understand. We're getting married." The words hung in the air. Elena laughed a sharp, hysterical sound. "You're insane. I met you yesterday. You kidnapped me. You just had a man killed in front of me. And now you want me to marry you? I'm saving your life," Dominic corrected, his voice flat. "If you're just the former surrogate, you're an easy target. A loose end to be cut. But if you're the wife of Dominic Castellano, you're protected by the laws of our world. Attacking the wife of a Don is a declaration of war against the entire commission." He stepped closer. "No one touches the wife of a boss. Not even Marcus." Elena's mind was spinning. This couldn't be happening. This was a nightmare. She was a waitress from Queens who couldn't afford her electricity bill, and now she was being proposed to by a mafia boss in a mansion on a cliff. "And if I refuse?" she whispered. Dominic's expression didn't change. "Then I give you $5 million. I put you on a plane to a country with no extradition treaty, and you never see Sophia again." It wasn't a threat. It was a cold, simple fact. He couldn't let her take Sophia, and he couldn't let her stay unprotected. Marriage or exile. Those were her only options. Elena looked at her daughter. Sophia's small chest rose and fell peacefully. Her golden curls spilled across the cushion. Her tiny fingers still gripped Elena's apron. 5 years. Elena had mourned this child for 5 years. She had lit candles on October 14th. She had whispered happy birthday, rose to an empty room. She had cried herself to sleep more nights than she could count. And now her daughter was here, alive, reaching for her even in dreams. "I have conditions," Elena said quietly. Dominic raised an eyebrow. "Separate bedrooms. I raise her my way, no nannies making decisions without my approval, and no guns anywhere near Sophia. Ever." Dominic studied her face. Most people cowered before him. Most people begged and pleaded and agreed to anything. This woman was negotiating. "Agreed," he said. He held out the ring. Elena took it. The metal was cold against her fingers, heavy with history and expectation. She slid it onto her left hand. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "Welcome to the family," Dominic said. But his eyes weren't cold anymore. There was something else there. Something almost like respect. The next morning, Elena was transformed. A team of stylists arrived at dawn, 3 women and 2 men carrying garment bags, makeup cases, and enough hair products to stock a salon. They worked on her for 4 hours. The waitress uniform was burned. In its place, a cream-colored Valentino dress that hugged her figure like it was sewn directly onto her skin. Louboutin heels. A diamond necklace that probably cost more than her parents' house in Ohio. Her hair was styled in soft waves. Her makeup was flawless, natural but elegant. When Elena looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize herself. The tired waitress from Queens was gone. In her place stood someone who looked like she belonged in this world of marble floors and armed guards. "You look perfect," one stylist whispered. Elena didn't feel perfect. She felt like a lamb dressed for slaughter. At noon, she descended the grand staircase. Dominic waited at the bottom, wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her yearly salary. When he saw her, something flickered in his eyes. Appreciation? Surprise? She couldn't tell. "The car is ready," he said. "We're attending a charity luncheon. Your first public appearance as my fiancé." Elena nodded, her stomach churning with nerves. They walked toward the front entrance. Tony and 2 other guards flanked them, but as they stepped onto the gravel driveway, a delivery truck rumbled up to the iron gates. Everyone tensed. "Hold," Tony barked into his radio. The driver, a young man in a brown uniform, carried a long rectangular box toward the security checkpoint. His hands were shaking. "Delivery for Mr. Castellano," he stammered. "I was just told to bring it here. I don't know what's inside, I swear." Tony took the box, scanned it for explosives, checked for wires, chemicals, tracking devices. "It's clean, boss," he reported. "Just flowers." Dominic gestured for the box. He set it on the hood of the car and lifted the lid. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Inside were 12 roses, dead roses. Their heads had been cut off. Their petals were blackened and withered. They smelled of rot and decay. And in the center of the box, nestled among the dead flowers, sat a small teddy bear. It was identical to Sophia's. The same brown fur, the same button eyes, the same red ribbon around its neck. But this one was soaked in red paint. Thick, viscous red that dripped down its fur like blood. A card was tucked beneath it. Dominic pulled it out and read aloud. "She looks so much like her mother. Let's hope she has better luck." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. "How?" she gasped. "Sophia's bear is upstairs. She's holding it right now." "How did they—" "They bought a copy," Dominic said. his voice cold as steel. "This is a message. Marcus knows you're here. He knows exactly who you are." He crushed the card in his fist. The paper crumbled like ash. "How did he find out so fast?" Elena whispered. "Crawford couldn't have told him Crawford is." "Dead men don't talk," Dominic agreed. "But Marcus has eyes everywhere. Probably had someone watching the restaurant. Maybe even someone inside this house." He turned to Tony. "Double the guards on Sophia. No one enters or leaves her room without my authorization. And find out which of our people is leaking information. When you find them..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Tony nodded and disappeared into the house. Dominic turned back to Elena. "Change of plans," he said. "We're not going to lunch." "Then what are we doing?" Dominic's eyes darkened. "We're going to war. But first, we show him you publicly, in front of everyone who matters, so he knows I'm not afraid." He took her hand. His grip was firm, warm, almost reassuring. "Tonight, there's a gala. Every powerful family in New York will be there, including Marcus." He pulled her closer. "By midnight, everyone will know you're mine, and anyone who threatens you will answer to me." The Pierre Hotel blazed with light against the Manhattan skyline. Crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, women dripping in diamonds, men whose suits cost more than most people's cars. This was the Children of New York Charity Gala, the social event of the year. But Elena knew the truth now. Behind the smiles and the charity checks, this was neutral territory. A place where mafia bosses, corrupt politicians, and billionaires with blood on their hands mingled under the guise of philanthropy. Everyone here had secrets. Everyone here had sins. She fit right in. Elena wore a midnight blue silk gown that left her back bare. It was the kind of dress she had only seen in magazines, the kind she would have walked past in a store window without daring to touch. The engagement ring caught every light in the room. Her hand gripped Dominic's arm, partly for show, partly because she was terrified. "Breathe," Dominic murmured as they approached the entrance. "Smile. You're not a waitress anymore. You're a queen." "Queens don't shake this much," Elena whispered back. "The good ones do. It means they understand the stakes." They stepped through the gilded doors. The ballroom fell silent. Hundreds of heads turned. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dominic Castellano hadn't brought a woman to a public event since Victoria's funeral 5 years ago. He hadn't even been seen with a date. And now he walked in with a stunning stranger on his arm. A diamond the size of a marble on her finger. The whispers started immediately. "Who is she? Where did she come from? Is that an engagement ring?" Elena felt the weight of every stare. She forced her spine straight, lifted her chin, channeled every ounce of courage she had left. She was a mother protecting her child. She could do this. They made it halfway across the ballroom before he appeared. Marcus Castellano, 58 years old, silver hair slicked back like a wolf in a 3-piece suit. He wore Armani-like armor and smiled like a snake sizing up its prey. "Dominic," he called out, arms spread wide. "My favorite nephew. I didn't think you'd make it tonight." He embraced Dominic with theatrical warmth. Elena watched his hands, how they lingered on Dominic's shoulders, how his fingers pressed just a little too hard. A predator marking territory. Marcus pulled back, his smile never wavering. Then his eyes slid to Elena. He looked her up and down. Slowly, deliberately, not with desire, with calculation, like a butcher inspecting a cut of meat. "And who is this?" Marcus asked. "I don't believe we've been introduced." "This is Elena," Dominic said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. "My fiancé." The word dropped like a bomb. A waiter nearby fumbled his tray. Champagne glasses clinked in the sudden silence. Marcus blinked. Just once. It was the only sign of surprise he allowed himself. "Fiancé," he repeated, tasting the word. My, you move fast, nephew. It's only been, 5 years since we buried poor Victoria?" "5 years is long enough to mourn," Dominic replied coldly. "Even you must agree." Marcus chuckled a dry, hollow sound. Of course. A man needs companionship. Especially a man in your position." He turned to Elena, extending his hand. "Welcome to the family, my dear. I'm Marcus, the uncle who's always looked out for Dominic since his father passed." Elena took his hand. His grip was cold, dry, like holding a corpse. "Pleasure to meet you," she managed. Marcus smiled, but his eyes were dead. They swept over her face, cataloging every feature, calculating every possibility. This was the man who had orchestrated everything, who had kept her baby from her for 5 years, who had sent the dead roses and the bloody teddy bear, And now he was looking at her like she was already in a grave he just hadn't dug it yet. Such a lovely couple, Marcus murmured. I do hope this one lasts longer than the last. Marcus didn't release Elena's hand. He held it just a moment too long, his cold fingers pressing against her knuckles like he was memorizing the bones beneath her skin. So tell me, he said, his voice silk over broken glass. Where did you two meet? It must be quite the romantic story. Elena felt Dominic tense beside her. This was the test. She had rehearsed this in the car. Dominic had drilled her on every detail, what to say, how to say it, which lies to tell. She met Marcus's dead eyes and smiled. At the cemetery, actually, Marcus blinked. I beg your pardon? I was visiting my father's grave, Elena said smoothly. Dominic was visiting Victoria. We started talking about loss, about grief, about how pain needs somewhere to go. She tilted her head, letting the chandelier light catch her engagement ring. It wasn't romance at first, Mr. Castellano. It was recognition. Two people who understood what it meant to lose everything. Marcus studied her face, searching for cracks, for tells, for any sign of deception. Elena gave him nothing. How poetic, Marcus finally said, and how convenient. He released her hand and turned slightly toward Dominic. And what about little Sophia? That child is so difficult, so broken. The doctors say she'll never speak, never connect, never be normal. Elena felt rage flicker in her chest. Broken. He called her daughter broken. She forced her smile wider. Sophia speaks to me perfectly, she said. Marcus went still. In fact, Elena continued, she remembers quite a lot. Faces, voices, people who visited the house when she was younger. She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. She has an excellent memory for details. It was a bluff. Sophia could barely say 10 words. She had only started speaking last night, but Marcus didn't know that. His face went pale for just a fraction of a second. If Sophia had heard his conversations with Victoria years ago, if the child had witnessed things she shouldn't have, if she wasn't as silent as everyone believed. Is that so? Marcus murmured, his smile now carved from ice. Children do surprise us, don't they? His phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at the screen. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of satisfaction that he couldn't quite hide. Forgive me, he said, already stepping backward. An important call. Business never sleeps, you understand. He turned and disappeared into the crowd, heading toward a shadowed corner of the ballroom. Elena watched him go. He believed it, she whispered to Dominic. I think he boss. Tony's voice crackled through Dominic's earpiece. Elena saw Dominic's jaw tighten. What? He muttered, barely moving his lips. The estate alarm system just went dark. Silent trigger. And the nanny isn't responding to the secure line. Neither are the guards at the east wing. The color drained from Dominic's face. Elena grabbed his arm. What is it? What's wrong? Dominic was already scanning the ballroom. The corner where Marcus had gone was empty. He was gone. Sophia! Elena gasped. The pieces crashed together in her mind. Marcus hadn't come to welcome them. He hadn't come to size up the enemy. He had come to distract them, to keep them here, smiling for cameras, while his men attacked the house, while his men took her daughter. We have to go, Elena said, her voice rising. Now. We have to go, now. Dominic grabbed her hand. Tony, bring the car around. Tell the driver to break every speed limit between here and Long Island. Already on it, boss. They pushed through the crowd, abandoning all pretense of calm. Behind them, champagne glasses clinked, and laughter echoed. No one noticed the Mafia boss and his fiancée fleeing into the night. Dominic grabbed Elena's hand and pulled her through the crowd. No more smiles. No more pretense. No more playing the elegant couple. Elena's gown caught on a waiter's tray. Champagne glasses shattered across the marble floor. Guests gasped and stumbled backward. She didn't care. Her heels snagged on the red carpet at the entrance. She kicked them off without breaking stride, running barefoot across the cold stone steps. The midnight blue silk tore at the hem. She didn't care about that either. Tony had the car waiting at the curb, a black Mercedes with bulletproof windows and an engine built for speed. Dominic threw open the driver's door and shoved Tony aside. I'm driving. He slammed his foot on the accelerator before Elena had even closed her door. The car rocketed into the Manhattan night. 120 miles per hour. Red lights meant nothing. Stop signs were suggestions. Other cars swerved and honked as the Mercedes tore through intersections like a bullet. Tony was in the back seat, phone pressed to his ear. Alpha Team. Respond. Alpha Team, do you copy? Static. Bravo Team, report status. Nothing. East Wing, come in. East Wing. Silence. Elena's hands gripped the dashboard so hard her knuckles turned white. Tears streamed down her face. My baby, she sobbed. My daughter. It was the first time she had called Sophia that way. Not the child, not the little girl, not Sophia. My daughter. The words ripped from somewhere deep inside her, a place that had been frozen for 5 years. We're 10 minutes out, Dominic said through clenched teeth. Hold on. The car screamed across the bridge to Long Island. The speedometer hit 130. Elena prayed to a god she hadn't spoken to since the clinic in Switzerland. Please, please let her be okay. Please don't take her from me twice. The iron gates of the Castellano estate appeared in the headlights. They were closed. Dominic didn't slow down. The Mercedes smashed through the gates, tearing them off their hinges. Metal screamed against metal. Sparks flew into the night. The car skidded to a stop on the gravel driveway. The front door of the mansion stood wide open. Every light was dark. Elena was out of the car before it fully stopped. She ran up the stone steps, bare feet bleeding on the rough surface. Inside the foyer, 2 guards lay unconscious on the marble floor. Needles still protruded from their necks, tranquilizer darts. Sophia! Elena screamed. Her voice echoed through the empty halls. No answer. She ran up the grand staircase, Dominic right behind her. The nursery door was splintered open. Inside was chaos. The crib was overturned. Toys scattered across the floor. Books ripped from shelves. The curtains billowed in the cold wind from an open window. Sophia's teddy bear lay abandoned on the carpet. But no Sophia. Then Elena heard it. A scream, high-pitched, terrified, coming from above. The rooftop. They ran up another flight of stairs, then another, following the sound of the crying child. Dominic kicked open the door to the rooftop terrace. The wind hit Elena like a fist. And then she saw them. Marcus stood at the edge of the roof, his silver hair whipping in the sea wind. His Armani suit was immaculate. His smile was calm. Beside him stood another man tall, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and cold Slavic features. Viktor Volkov, the boss of the Russian Mafia, the Castellano family's oldest enemy. And in Marcus's hand, dangling over the edge of the cliff by the back of her nightgown, was Sophia. 20 meters below, the black ocean roared and crashed against the rocks. Sophia's small body twisted in the wind. Her screams were swallowed by the storm. "Mama!" she wailed. "Mama!" Elena's heart stopped. One more step, and the little princess learns to fly. Marcus's voice cut through the howling wind. His silver hair whipped around his face, but his smile remained perfectly calm, perfectly evil. Dominic froze mid-stride. His hand moved slowly upward, showing he was no threat. Behind him, Elena's body shook uncontrollably. Her bare feet were numb on the cold concrete. Her torn gown snapped in the wind like a broken flag. "Uncle," Dominic whispered. "Why?" Marcus laughed. It was a cruel sound, sharp and bitter, carried away by the storm. "Why?" he spat. "Because your father died and left everything to an 18-year-old boy. Because I sat on the sidelines for 20 years watching my nephew run the empire I helped build. The empire that should have been mine." His grip tightened on Sophia's nightgown. The little girl whimpered, her small hands clawing at the fabric around her throat. "Mama," she cried. "Mama, help." Elena's heart shattered with every scream. Viktor Volkov stepped forward, his thick Russian accent cutting through the night. "Marcus promised me the eastern ports," he said, lighting a cigarette as casually as if they were discussing business over dinner. "In exchange, I help him. Clean up." "Clean up," Dominic repeated, his voice hollow. Marcus shrugged. "Victoria's infertility was useful. I knew about it before you did. I encouraged her to find a surrogate. I arranged for the doctor to use the surrogate's egg instead of hers." He gestured toward Elena with his free hand. "I created a time bomb. The child isn't Victoria's, she's the product of a surrogacy fraud. If the truth ever came out, your inheritance would be void. The will specifically requires a legitimate heir. A bastard from a waitress doesn't count." Dominic's fists clenched. "You were going to blackmail me." "Eventually," Marcus admitted. "I was patient. I could wait until you turned 40, then reveal everything, watch you lose it all, take my rightful place. Then why act now?" Marcus's eyes flicked to Elena. "Because of her." He pointed directly at Elena's face. "The biological mother. The living proof that Sophia is your child, your blood, your DNA. She legitimizes everything. She destroys my leverage completely." His smile twisted into something ugly. "I couldn't let that stand." Sophia screamed again as a gust of wind made her swing over the void. "Stop!" Elena screamed. "Please! She's just a child!" Marcus ignored her. "Here's my offer, nephew," he said, turning back to Dominic. "Jump. End yourself tonight, right here, and I'll pull the girl back. I'll even let the mother live for now." He dangled Sophia a little lower, "Or stand there and watch your daughter fall." The wind howled. The ocean roared below. Elena couldn't breathe. Dominic didn't hesitate. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his gun, and threw it on the ground. The metal clattered across the wet concrete. Then he walked toward the edge of the roof. "Dominic, no!" Elena screamed, but he didn't stop. He climbed onto the parapet, the low wall that separated the terrace from the deadly drop below. His shoes scraped against the wet stone. His suit jacket flapped in the wind. He stood there, balanced on the edge of oblivion, staring at his uncle. "Pull her up first," Dominic said calmly. Marcus smiled. "A noble end. I always knew you had your father's weakness." He lifted Sophia slightly higher. "Say goodbye, nephew." Elena watched in horror. This couldn't be happening. She couldn't lose them both. Not her daughter. Not the man who had promised to protect them. Her eyes darted to the gun on the ground, then to Dominic on the ledge, then to Marcus's hand wrapped around her daughter's nightgown, and something inside her snapped. "There it is," Marcus said, watching Dominic stand on the ledge. "Finally, some nobility." His smile widened. "Your father would be proud. Dying for family. How poetic." He looked down at Sophia, still dangling from his grip. "Don't worry, little one. It will be quick." Then he opened his hand, not pulling her up, dropping her. Sophia's small body plummeted toward the darkness below. Her scream pierced the night. But Elena was already moving. She had started the moment Dominic stepped onto the wall. While everyone watched him, she had crept forward, silent, barefoot, invisible. Now she exploded into motion. No hesitation, no fear, no thought except one. My daughter. Elena sprinted across the wet terrace, her torn gown streaming behind her. She didn't scream, didn't cry out. Every ounce of energy focused on one single goal. She dove. Her body slid across the rain-slicked tiles like a baseball player sliding into home plate. The concrete tore at her skin. The cold bit into her flesh. She didn't feel it. Her body slipped under the iron railing, half of her sliding over the edge of the roof. Her arm shot out into empty air, and her hand caught Sophia's ankle. The impact nearly ripped Elena's arm from its socket. Her body slammed against the iron bars. Her shoulder screamed in agony, dislocated or torn. She couldn't tell. Her other hand clawed desperately at the railing, fingernails breaking against the metal. She hung there half on the roof, half in the void. Below her, Sophia dangled upside down, the ocean roaring 20 meters beneath her tiny body. The wind tore at them both. Elena's grip was slipping. "Mama!" Sophia screamed, her voice raw with terror. "I've got you," Elena shouted back, her voice breaking. "Mama's got you. I won't let go." Her shoulder burned like fire. Her muscles were tearing. The weight of her daughter pulled her toward the edge, inch by inch, but she held on. She would die before she let go. "Mama?" Sophia sobbed. "Mama hurt?" "No, baby," Elena lied through gritted teeth. "Mama's fine. Just hold on to my leg. Hold tight. Don't look down." She felt Sophia's small hands wrap around her calf. The child was so light, so fragile, so alive. Tears streamed down Elena's face, mixing with rain and sweat. 5 years. She had mourned this child for 5 years. She had believed the lies, accepted the grief, buried an empty grave in her heart. But her daughter was here, alive, and Elena would rip apart heaven and hell before she let anyone take her again. Above her, Marcus stood frozen. His face was twisted with shock. He hadn't expected this. He had calculated every possibility: Dominic's rage, the security team's response, even Victor's potential betrayal. But he hadn't calculated a mother's love. He hadn't imagined anyone would be insane enough to dive off a building after a falling child. "Impossible," he whispered. Victor Volkov took a step back, equally stunned. "The woman is mad," he muttered in Russian. Marcus recovered quickly. His shock hardened into cold fury. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pistol. "Persistent little thing," he said, aiming at Elena's head. "Let me fix that." But he had forgotten about Dominic. Marcus aimed his pistol at Elena's head. His finger tightened on the trigger, but in that moment, that single moment when his eyes were fixed on the woman dangling over the edge, he forgot about Dominic. And Dominic had never intended to jump. He had climbed onto the parapet to distract Marcus, to buy time, to wait for the old man to make a mistake. This was that mistake. Dominic threw himself off the ledge, not toward the ocean, but ONTO, the terrace. He rolled across the wet concrete, his hand finding the gun he had thrown down minutes earlier. His fingers closed around the grip. He rose to one knee, and he fired. The first bullet hit Marcus in the shoulder. The impact spun the old man around. His pistol flew from his hand, skittering across the wet tiles. Marcus staggered backward, clutching his wound. Blood seeped through his fingers, black in the moonlight. His eyes were wide with disbelief. You wouldn't dare? You thought I wouldn't dare? Dominic rose to his feet, advancing with the gun leveled at his uncle's chest. You threatened my daughter. His voice was ice. His eyes were fire. You stole 5 years from her mother. You killed Dr. Crawford's conscience. You allied with my enemies. You held my child over a cliff. He stopped 3 feet from Marcus, close enough to see the fear flickering in those snake eyes. Uncle, I'm your blood, Marcus gasped, one hand raised in desperate surrender. Your father's brother, family. Dominic's jaw tightened. You stopped being family the moment you touched my daughter. He pulled the trigger. The second bullet tore through Marcus's chest. The old man stumbled backward, arms windmilling, grasping at air that couldn't save him. His back hit the low railing. For one frozen second, he balanced there, suspended between life and death. Then gravity claimed him. Marcus Castellano fell silently into the darkness. No scream, no final words, just the distant splash of a body hitting black water. Viktor Volkov reacted instantly, reaching for the gun inside his jacket. But he was too slow. Tony Ricci emerged from the stairwell behind him, weapon already drawn. Don't, Tony said calmly. Volkov spun around. Tony's bullet caught him in the forehead before he could raise his own gun. The Russian Mafia boss collapsed onto the wet concrete, dead before he hit the ground. Silence fell over the rooftop. Only the howling wind remained, and the ocean roaring below, and a mother's desperate gasps as she clung to her daughter over the abyss. Dominic dropped his gun and sprinted to the edge. He threw himself down, flat on his stomach, arms reaching over the railing. Elena, he shouted. Grab my hand. Elena looked up. Her face was twisted with pain. Her shoulder was dislocated. She could feel the bone grinding wrong. Her grip on Sophia's ankle was slipping, but she saw Dominic above her, his hands stretching toward her, his eyes filled with something she had never seen there before. Fear, not for himself, for them. I can't, Elena gasped. If I let go of the railing, I've got you, Dominic roared. Both of you. Trust me. Elena looked down at her daughter. Sophia's blue eyes stared back at her, terrified but trusting. Mama, the little girl whispered. Mama jump, Daddy catch. Elena made her choice. She released the railing. Dominic's hands locked around Elena's wrists like iron. He pulled. Every muscle in his body screamed. The rain made her skin slippery. The wind fought against him, but he didn't let go. Elena rose over the edge, first her shoulders, then her torso, then her legs, and still clutched in her hand, Sophia. The moment Elena's body cleared the railing, she swung her daughter up. Dominic grabbed the little girl's nightgown and hauled her onto the terrace. All 3 of them collapsed onto the cold, wet concrete, gasping, trembling, alive. For a long moment, no one moved. The wind howled around them. Rain pelted their faces. The bodies of Marcus and Victor lay forgotten nearby. Then Dominic wrapped his arms around both of them. He pulled Elena and Sophia against his chest, crushing them close. His face buried in Elena's wet hair. His shoulders shook violent tremors he couldn't control. For the first time in 20 years, the Mafia boss lost control of his emotions. He was crying, silent tears mixed with rain, streaming down the face of a man who hadn't wept since his mother's funeral. I caught her, Elena whispered, her voice breaking. I caught her, Dominic. I know, he said hoarsely. I saw. You're insane. I'm a mother, Elena replied. Every mother is insane. She laughed a broken, hysterical sound that turned into a sob. Her shoulder was screaming with pain. Her body was battered and bleeding. Her beautiful gown was shredded, but her daughter was in her arms. Her daughter, alive, safe. After 5 years of lies and grief and empty graves in her heart, her baby was here. Sophia lay between them, sandwiched in the warmth of 2 bodies. She had stopped crying. Her blue eyes, those impossibly blue eyes that matched Elena's, perfectly moved from one face to the other. Studying them, memorizing them, then she reached up with one small hand and touched Dominic's cheek. Her fingers traced the scar above his eyebrow. She turned and touched Elena's cheek. Her fingers lingered on the tears streaming down her mother's face. The little girl who hadn't spoken for 5 years opened her mouth. Her voice was still hoarse, still rusty, still the voice of a child learning to use words for the first time. But it was clearer than before, stronger. "Daddy," she said. Dominic's breath caught. Sophia turned to Elena. "Mama," Elena sobbed, pulling her daughter closer. Then Sophia looked at both of them together. Her small brow furrowed the face of a child searching for exactly the right word, the word she had needed her whole life but never knew how to say. "Family," she whispered. The word hung in the air like a prayer answered. Dominic pulled them both tighter. Elena pressed her lips to Sophia's forehead, and Sophia smiled. A real smile. The first real smile of her life. Around them, the storm began to fade. The rain softened to a gentle mist. The clouds parted at the horizon, and the first light of dawn crept across the sky, pale gold and soft pink, painting the black ocean with color. The darkness that had swallowed Marcus Castellano was retreating. A new day was beginning. Tony stood at the stairwell entrance, gun still in hand, watching the family huddled on the wet concrete. He said nothing. Some moments didn't need words. The sun rose higher, and for the first time in 5 years, Sophia closed her eyes, peacefully held by her father on one side and her mother on the other, where she had always belonged. 6 months had passed since that terrible night on the rooftop. The Castellano estate had transformed. Gone were the heavy black curtains that had shrouded every window. In their place hung white linen drapes that danced in the ocean breeze. Fresh flowers filled every room, roses, lilies, sunflowers. Elena had insisted. "A home needs life," she had said, "not shadows." And for the first time, the mansion felt like a home. The sound of a child's laughter echoed through the marble hallways, something the walls had never heard before. Sophia was almost 6 years old now. She had made miraculous progress with the speech therapist Elena had hired. She could speak in short sentences, slowly, carefully, but clearly. With Elena, she never stopped talking. "Mama, I want cake. Mama, read story. Mama, where Daddy?" Every word was a gift. Every sentence was a miracle. Elena was no longer a prisoner. She was the lady of the house. The staff called her Signora. Business associates bowed when she entered a room. The other Mafia wives treated her with cautious respect. She had traded her waitress apron for designer dresses. Her queen's apartment was a distant memory, but some things remained unchanged. She and Dominic still slept in separate bedrooms, just as they had agreed on that first night. They were partners, co-parents, allies against a dangerous world, but not husband and wife. Not really. During the day, they moved around each other with careful politeness. They discussed Sophia's progress, security arrangements, household matters. At night, they retreated to opposite ends of the mansion. Elena told herself it was enough. Having her daughter was enough. She didn't need anything more. But sometimes when Dominic's hand accidentally brushed hers at dinner, when she caught him watching her from across the room, she wondered. One night, everything changed. Elena was reading in bed when she heard it. A scream. Sophia's scream. She threw off the covers and ran. Dominic was running too from the opposite wing of the house. They collided in Sophia's doorway, shoulders crashing together. "Nightmare," Elena gasped. They rushed to the bed together. Sophia was tangled in her sheets, tears streaming down her face, crying out in her sleep. "No fall! No fall! Mama, catch!" Elena gathered her daughter into her arms. "I'm here, baby. Mama's here." Dominic sat on the other side of the bed, his large hand stroking Sophia's golden curls. "Daddy's here too, princess. Nothing can hurt you." Slowly, Sophia's sobs quieted. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at Elena, then at Dominic. Then she grabbed both their hands and pulled. "Daddy here," she murmured sleepily, tugging Dominic closer. "Mama here." She placed their hands together on her small chest, not scared now. Her eyes closed. Within moments, she was asleep again, peaceful this time, with a tiny smile on her face, but her hands still held theirs, keeping them close, keeping them together. Dominic and Elena looked at each other across their daughter's sleeping form. For the first time, there was no danger, no conspiracy, no enemy waiting in the shadows. Just them, just this moment. The moonlight streamed through the white curtains, painting everything silver. Elena could see Dominic's face clearly, the hard lines softened, the predator's eyes gentle. "Elena," he said quietly. "Yes?" A pause. "Your room. Is it cold?" Elena felt her heart skip. She understood what he was really asking. She smiled. "Maybe," she whispered. Dominic smiled back. It was the first real smile she had ever seen on his face, and it was beautiful. That was the story of Dominic, Elena, and little Princess Sophia. A story that reminds us that sometimes blood does not make a family, love does. And there is nothing more powerful, more dangerous, more beautiful than a mother fighting for her child. Sophia spent 5 years in silence, not because she could not speak, but because her heart was waiting for the right person to listen, waiting for her real mother to find her. And Elena spent 5 years grieving a child she believed was dead, only to discover that love never truly dies. It waits, it hopes, and when the moment comes, it fights with the strength of 1,000 armies. This story teaches us so many precious lessons. Never give up on the ones you love, even when the world tells you they are gone forever. The bonds between mother and child cannot be broken by lies, by distance, or by time. True family is not about blood or legal documents. It is about the people who hold you when you fall, who fight for you when you cannot fight for yourself, who choose you again and again, every single day. And sometimes, the darkest chapters of our lives are not endings, they are beginnings. Now, I want to hear from you. What did you feel while listening to this story? Did it remind you of someone in your life? A mother who sacrificed everything for you? A child who changed your world? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear from the depths of your heart. If this story touched you, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our new stories. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Every like, every comment, every share helps us continue creating stories that move hearts and inspire souls. I wish all of you watching this video good health, happiness, and peace in your daily lives. May your families be filled with love, and may you always find the strength to fight for the people who matter most. Thank you for being here with me today. Goodbye for now, and I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves and each other.